podcast day.
It is podcast dates. A Sunday for reasons. Let's get to it.
What do you got?
Let's talk about the thing that I brought up last weekend during our game night. Remember, it's this feeling of sadness when you have a brand new phone. It's in perfect condition, but then it suffers from even the smallest imperfection, like you do just a tiny scratch, or maybe there's a tiny dent or something over the course of the first few weeks.
Yep.
And yeah, and I kept thinking about it. It's like, well, because it seems like you're not really affected by it, but Joel and I seem to be at least somewhat affected by it.
Right.
And I looked into it a little bit. So I found a concept in Japanese called mono no aware. And I'm going to just read the little paragraph at the beginning of the Wikipedia page because it really highlights it quite a bit. So it's translated in two ways, but let's say the easier one. An empathy toward things, or a sensitivity to ephemera. And actually, ephemera, we can touch on that, but ephemera is basically all those things that, all the things in real life, like let's say a newspaper article or a little pamphlet, things that nobody really stores. They're not artwork. They're nothing special. They disappear after a while. And it's an idiom for the awareness of impermanence or transience of things, and both a transient, gentle sadness at their passing, as well as a longer, deeper, gentle sadness about this state being the reality of life. So it's pretty deep. Apparently, that's a whole concept in Japanese.
That is pretty deep.
But that's exactly the thing that I was. So they have an alternative there to this gentle sadness, wistfulness. I think that's the thing that it's like that, that's how you would describe it, I guess, is wistfulness. Melancholy, another word for it would be. But yeah, I don't know. And then, I'll give another example because I do think it's interesting that not only do you have it in the case of like, a brand new gadget and you suddenly scratched it a little bit, but also in the case of like, let's say, you run a restaurant, you have a 5 out of 5 rating on it, and then suddenly, somebody gives a 4-star review. And it's no longer possible to ever have a 5 out of 5 rating. I think that's interesting that gap between a perfect 5 out of 5 and whatever is below that is very large, regardless of how small it seems. Because, a 4.8 versus a 4.9, whatever. What difference does it make at that point? But a 4.9 versus a 5? I don't know. That seems heavier.
I don't know. I still don't necessarily get it. Like nothing is perfect. Nothing stays perfect. I can't spend even a fraction of my being worrying about that inevitability.
Well, you're a mature soul, I guess. That's the idea here, that you've elevated yourself. You've achieved Zen, as the Buddhists would say.
No, I don't think I've achieved Zen. Just I don't know. There's some things that just can't be worried about. Like things scratch, things dent, things smudge, things. You can't please everybody, etc., etc.
Well, I feel like I've improved over the years because I think when I was younger, I felt more strongly about that. I had that feeling more than I do now. Whereas, like, yeah, I mean, I still get upset, I think, when I get something new and, like, oh, well, there's a scratch now. But not nearly as much as I perhaps used to. Yeah, I definitely felt stronger about these things when I was younger. And I've seen that anecdote because, I was looking this up as much as I could. And often people complain about the phone situation. That's the easiest one to look for. And you see a whole forum thread where it's like somebody talks about it and then you have just replies saying like, yeah, I have the same feeling. Yeah, I do this, I do that. Or that's why I put a case immediately. But then you have the old timers who'll say like, well, I used to feel that way, but not anymore. I've matured to the point where I do see this in the same way, I guess, that you see it, where, it's a fleeting thing. It's not a big enough deal to worry about.
Yeah, it's really not. It's really not. You can't keep it perfect, so I just don't worry about it. There's certainly a difference between, like very good quality and, good quality or medium quality or whatever. There's a line where you have some semblance of control and you don't want to cross that. So,
Yeah, you're not going to smack it on the ground, right? Like, you're not going to just.
yeah, you don't be completely careless about it. When I got my phone, I got a case.
So you do use a case. That was going to be my follow up, actually, as like a more lighthearted thing. You do use a case on your phones.
Yes.
You're not a monster.
So, yeah. Like with my car, people are, I had a conversation with somebody at work the other day. They were like, "Oh, I think somebody slightly scratched my car."
by accident.
when they were pulling in, and they left a small little scratch or whatever, and I'm just like, who cares? But at the same time, I'm not going around running into fire hydrants and
Oh, what color should I have it today?
Oh,
it's a yellow one.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, this guy's turning left, and there's a parked car on my right. There's really no room to squeeze, but I'm just going to do it anyways. And what may be, may be. I'm not going out and doing that kind of stuff. But in terms of perfectly, I'm not gonna worry about, like I said, a smudge or a scratch or whatever. And say, I don't know. Same with the restaurant. I guess I don't own a restaurant to say one way or the other, but I've never seen a 5-star restaurant.
No, and I'm not saying 5-star. This is more of like, let's say even you're you're an Amazon seller or any other thing where you have a rating to your name. Hell, even on Uber, for example, you take an Uber ride. The first time you do that, you get a rating by the driver. And I mean, most of the time people give 5 out of 5 regardless. You give it to the driver, they give it to you. But, for example, I think last time I checked, I had a 4.9. So at some point, somebody gave me less than 5 for whatever reason, which is fine. But that's one of those cases as well where somebody might feel like, oh, well, there goes the dream of perfection in Uber.
I think if it goes along with something, I guess maybe I can understand it a little bit.
If it goes along with like a reward, you mean, if you keep a 5 out of 5?
No, like, okay, like Uber, for example, that rating determines if you get who they push things through to.
Oh, you mean like you might not get as many 5 out of 5 drivers?
There's like a star point with the Uber app where they won't give you as many jobs.
Oh, if you're a driver. Yeah, okay.
But same if you're a passenger. If you're rated at like 3 stars or something, there aren't going to be drivers lining up to pick you up.
They'll put you on the lowest priority, I guess.
Yeah. People start ignoring you and they'll stop pushing jobs to you and all that kind of stuff. So there's something that goes along with that. But still, it's not like, oh, you lost 5 stars. So you're getting bumped down the list. But sometimes if it goes along with something, then yeah, maybe it's not as good. But also if your rating is that low, you probably know your shit and don't care.
You embrace
it. Like a restaurant, well, you shouldn't embrace it, but I don't know. Like a restaurant that has like a 2.5, they're bad, but you had a lot of opportunities to not be bad.
Well, no, they got to pivot it so that like their commercials include cockroaches as a mascot.
Yeah, there you go.
That'd be
That's
awesome.
great.
Come on. That's how you attract people. You're just like, this is actually a dive bar.
Yeah, this is actually a dive bar.
But what do you mean
Look,
it goes
there's a
along
dead
with
body
it,
in
though?
Like I said, if you're down to a 2.5, you've had a lot of opportunities to fix the problem.
No, I'm honestly, for the case of like this minor imperfection business, I'm actually really talking about just between a 5 and a 4.9. You're just a fraction below perfection. Because everything else is like, yeah, at that point it's true. Obviously, 3 is worse than a 4. But I don't know, that feeling, it's a different feeling, at least personally. It's a different feeling between a 100% and anything below that, including 99, 99.5, as close as you want to get it.
That's fine. Like I said, I don't sympathize with that, but empathize with that, whatever. But I don't know. I think the much more interesting case is further along down the spectrum. If you're ordering something off of eBay or Amazon or whatever, where is that line? Or even at a restaurant, where is that line when you're looking at reviews where you go, maybe not them?
Maybe not the 1 out of 5.
Yeah, maybe not the 1 out of 5. But where is that line? I think that's more interesting than 4.9 versus 5.
Well, okay. I mean, that's a different discussion at this point. But yeah, for me, the line would be for eBay, for example. I would say a 4 out of 5.
4?
And
Okay.
it's a lot of it isn't even the rating; it's the number of reviews. If it's a 5 out of 5, but it only has a couple, I'll take the 4 out of 5 when it has hundreds instead. Because it's like, well, they've proven themselves over the course of hundreds of deliveries or sales versus the one which only had a couple, which is like, okay, well, they got lucky maybe, who knows? So for eBay, for things like that, Amazon as well, 4 out of 5, I think is as long as there's enough reviews, that's what I would go with. Is that also what you would do?
For a seller, yeah, I think 4 out of 5 would be good. Yeah. Now, what about a product? What if you're looking for something?
Well, so for products,
What's your
that's the tricky
review
thing,
mark?
right? Because let's say you go to Amazon and there's a product that for a fact based on external sources, it's good, but for some reason on Amazon it's a 3 out of 5 because this person complained about something that maybe it was their fault, which happens really often. I don't know. There's some products that I know for a fact are good, but then I look at the reviews and this customer just completely misunderstood what the point of it was. Or maybe they misunderstood the feature, how to set it up, or they broke it or whatever. So in those cases, the sky's the limit. It could be as low as it needs to be. I think I did buy something at some point that was actually rated as a 2 out of 5 or even less.
Oh, really?
Because I knew for a fact. And because, it was one of those things which is like really, nobody's going to buy it. And the handful of people maybe that didn't know what the deal was. So they rated it really low.
Okay, but what if you don't know?
But if I don't know,
then if you know, what if you don't know?
Then it would probably also be a 4 out of 5. But again, a lot of it has to do with the number of reviews, especially with Amazon, because that's a mess in terms of what's actually legitimate of a review. Even if you read through them, sometimes it's like, yeah, this feels like it's fake. Even if it's like a long-winded, they try to be snazzy and expressive, it still feels fake. Honestly, in those cases, I usually go for an external review anyway. If it's something that's actually like worth putting time towards, if it's something that costs a few $100s, I'm gonna try to find another source for a review, because even if it's a 4.5 out of 5, because usually you're comparing things, right? So let's say you're buying a vacuum and there's 2 or 3 different brands. And it's like all of them have a 4.5 out of 5. What am I supposed to do? Well, then you got to go to an external review instead.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, I don't know. I'll tell you, my office chair, when I looked it up, I just looked it up right now. It's got a 4.2 star rating from 847 people. And I fucking hate this chair.
You got this on Amazon, right?
Yeah, I got this on Amazon. Like, I hate this chair.
That's why it's so difficult on Amazon, because you never know, of those 800 reviews, how many of those are actually legitimate.
What I usually do when I look at this kind of stuff, when I look at reviews for things, I'll look at like the 5-star reviews a little bit, but I'm more interested in the 4 and 3-star reviews. And even the 1 and 2, even the lower star reviews, even the 1 and 2, I want to, because 5-star, they're just going to be like, oh, I just got this yesterday. It's the best office chair ever. I sat in it for 3 hours and my butt didn't hurt. Okay, well, that's great. Like that's what the 5-star reviews usually are. The 5-star reviews are always the honeymoon phase reviews. So I like to look at the lower ones and see what people actually think are wrong with it.
The problem with the 1 out of 5s, though, is I often see like poor delivery, and so Amazon has to respond with an automatic message saying, "Oh, it's our fault. We're gonna, figure it out," or it's like, it was damaged during delivery. So it's hard to say whether it's actually. Yeah,
there's one right here: 3 out of 5, satisfactory product, horrible delivery. Yeah.
Oh, well, see, there we go. So it's weird that some people they'll dock points for bad delivery, even though it's not up to the seller. Especially if it's fulfilled by Amazon specifically, and some people won't. So you won't even know, especially if they don't put any text, right?
Yeah, and that's where you have to like read the review and actually see what the issues are. It's the same with like when I read like a video game review. The score is not nearly as important as what's being said.
That's why you have such a fond feelings towards Death Stranding, because the reviews really got you there, right?
It wasn't really the reviews. It was just like all the after people talk. Because I didn't get Death Stranding on release. I got it like a year later, whenever the director's cut came out. So.
Oh, okay. I thought you got it. I thought that's why you felt burned by it.
No, I felt burned by it because everybody was like, "Oh, it's so good," and I was like, "Oh, I'll play it and I'll get the director's cuts, out or whatever." But I bought it for full price. That's why I felt burned. And I hate buying older games for full price, and then especially when they don't pan out. But that's what you read. What you gotta look at things. But still, I mean, there is like a kind of a star thing in my head. Like I think 4 is still too low.
4 out of 5 is too low.
Yeah, when I'm looking at products, I usually like to see like a 4.4. That's usually where my number is.
But what about the number of reviews? How do you feel about the number of reviews?
It has to have a decent number of reviews.
Well, what's a decent number for you? Hundreds, thousands?
I think it depends on what I'm looking at, what I can find.
Mm-hmm. Like if you're buying a spatula for a few dollars, How many reviews?
Well, no, I don't care about that. I'll just go to Walmart and get whatever. Like, I don't care about I'll just get whatever the Amazon Basics, stolen concept version is. But
Riddled with microplastics version.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. But no, it's got to be over $100 ish when I have to start looking at reviews. It kind of depends on where I am at that point in time. It's like if I know I want it, I'll be like, yeah, okay. If it's not too expensive, I'll be like, yeah, I'll just grab whatever. I know they're mostly all the same. But when you get something like a chair or something like that, you're gonna spend a few $100s at least.
Well, that's the thing, yeah. Like with a chair, similar as, as we've discussed as with the bed, you spend so much of your time in it, especially if you work from home all the time and you're sitting in it even for gaming. So you're spending, at least 12 hours a day in there, which is, that's more than the time you spend in your bed. So you want the chair to potentially be more expensive and more luxurious than your bed in order to accommodate.
True. And for things like TVs and all that, I usually go to external stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely great websites for that. Artings is a really good one for a lot of electronics.
One I used when I got my TV. Yeah,
because they stress test them over the year, so it's not like you get a review that's just like the honeymoon phases you put it.
Yep.
It's really one that exercises them to their fullest capacity.
That's right. Yeah, it really does differ quite a bit from product to product. Now, what about restaurants? Where do you draw the line at restaurants?
Oh, I mean, it's 1 out of 5 is fine. As long as as long as nobody says that there were cockroaches in the food, cockroaches adjacent is okay.
Oh yeah.
But no. I mean, obviously, like if I'm walking around somewhere, this happens rarely, like especially now. But let's say I was walking around somewhere and I don't really care about looking stuff up and finding yet another place somewhere. I don't mind going into a place as long as it seems welcoming and just trying out the food.
Okay.
Because there's so many places around, so it's like, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to like pick and choose on my phone right now and like figure out the best one. I don't mind going into one, especially if I have nothing else to do that day, and so I can sit on the toilet if there's something really goes wrong.
Okay, there you go.
That's the biggest concern, right? Like, bad food, whatever. Like, it doesn't taste good, whatever. But the point is, if you get sick, well, yeah, you got to make sure that you have a backup plan. That's the biggest problem with a bad restaurant. True. Everything else, slow wait time. There's been like high ranked restaurants that had really long delays as well. So I'm not gonna use that as an excuse either. That all depends on how busy the restaurant is too.
So you just like to go for it?
Sometimes, but not all the time. Like if I have the opportunity to pick and choose, I probably will pick and choose at least a 4. And again, it depends on the number. So like I'll go with more reviews. A 4 is better with like 100 reviews is better than a 4.5 with only a couple.
True.
It has to, like, I often look at the most recent reviews because I don't know, restaurants, they're finicky.
Yeah, because they can flip. Yeah,
they change ownership. They change, mostly ownership. And I've seen it happen where it's like, you look at the recent reviews, first of all, I've seen it happen where it's like, you look at the recent reviews, they're awful. And you look at the old ones like, oh, they're perfect. So what gives, right? It's like a video game on Steam. Some developer pushes some crap onto it, and suddenly the recent reviews are mostly negative. But I've seen it the other way, where it's like a restaurant was apparently bad, right, according to old reviews, but then the recent ones are really good. So you kind of want to actually help it out. You want to go there and confirm that, yeah, okay, they've improved. They fixed their mistakes, or maybe the new ownership has fixed the mistakes. That has happened, actually. I have seen that in Vancouver once. And it was genuinely good, so it worked.
Yep, sometimes they do fix their stuff. Or the new ownership fixes it, yeah.
Yeah, so restaurants is different. It's a bit trickier than products. Because, again, it's one of those things where the worst case scenario is some sort of illness, which most of the time is not a big deal, but you don't really want to risk it, so you kind of want to stay on the safe side. Even if, the meal isn't, let's say you go to a place that's not terribly expensive. It's true, you'll lose out on however much they cost, but compared to $1,000 television, it's not a big deal. But the problem happens if you do get sick. Yeah,
I always, play it more by ear. Do they have what I'm looking for right now, or what do they have? That's always important. And, if I'm ordering online, I'll take a quick glance at the reviews. Like, I won't even look at the reviews. I'll just look at the aggregate. Like, very rarely. I guess it also depends on how much time I have. But because I'm not as picky. I'm just looking to avoid like the 2-star restaurants, but I'll go lower than like 4. I'll go down to like 3.5 or something like that. If I'll just be, same thing. Like, oh, let's just give it a shot. What the hell? I don't think I've ever gotten sick from a restaurant, so I think that's
Yeah, see, that's a good thing then. The other thing, though, with restaurants is, let's say you want to try a new type of food, then it's not necessarily true that, maybe you get sick, but it's not because the restaurant was bad. It might just be that the food doesn't agree with you. Then it's more of a case of like, well, do you want to risk trying something new? Do you have the opportunity for that now, or do you want to play it safe?
I very rarely risk trying something new, especially on my own. I just hate the idea of, especially because, takeout food is so expensive now. I just hate the idea of risking like a bad meal and flushing, 25, 30, whatever dollars down the toilet.
Literally. Flushing literally.
Yeah, maybe in some cases. That's right. So I'm like, I just want to stick with what and if it's a new, like, I'm not saying I won't go to a new restaurant, but, I won't try new food on my own. Like, I'll wait till somebody's like, oh yeah, let's go here. Like when you came down and we did I'd never had the Japanese barbecue or whatever we did that day. And like, I'll try a new restaurant, but I won't try necessarily new, especially like types of food. You know what I mean? Like a pasta dish, that I've never had before might sound good on paper. I'll be like, oh, I'll try it. But, I'm not going to go do Middle Eastern cuisine on a random Thursday.
You're not gonna wake up and think to yourself, you know what? I'm feeling like a dozen oysters this morning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Or that one Greek place down the road has goat brains. Like, we're going to go for that today. Like,
oh, do they?
I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe.
I didn't think they ate goat brains.
Well, maybe they do. I don't know. They eat all the other parts of the goat. Yeah. So I guess with restaurants, it differs quite a bit. But I don't know. In none of those situations where we're 5 stars, like, I would be wary of 5 stars. It could have 6 million reviews, and I would be wary of 5 stars.
Because they managed to maintain a 5 out of 5 for every single one, as if they threatened every single person that was leaving a review.
That's right. So I don't know. That's where I sit. Like I said, I'd be wary of 5 stars. It's just not possible. If it's got like 10 reviews and says 5 stars, I'd be like, oh, okay. I'll wait till it gets up a little bit, but I'll go for this nice 4.4. So not that I've ever been a restaurant owner, but I feel like I'd go in with like the same thing. Like, oh, I got 5 stars. That's nice.
But you would be fine with it dipping a little bit.
But it's 3 people. But it's as soon as it goes down, like as long as somebody's not giving it a 1 star or a 2 star out of nowhere.
At the beginning, can you imagine you open a restaurant and you get the first thing, just some disgruntled customer comes in, leaves a 1 out of 5 because they're entitled, and there you go, you got a 1 out of 5 now. Suddenly, that's awful. That must be that would be terrible.
Yeah, it'd be restaurant business very volatile. That could be enough to tank your business, because people do look. A lot of people go in for that, those reviews and all that. They live their life based on them.
Those Yelp reviews.
Yeah, the Yelp reviews. That's right.
I never used Yelp. I don't think I've ever actually used it genuinely. Yeah, I know of it.
It's bigger in the States, though.
Is it bigger in the States? Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
It definitely has a presence in Canada because I've seen Yelp reviews. I just never really took to them.
But a lot of people do.
Because a lot of people think they're food critics. Like, I don't know if you've ever read a Yelp review, but they always sound very high and mighty. Like, oh, look at me. I know food.
I've seen TV show episodes that are based on that. I think South Park had an episode. Was it South Park?
Where they make fun of people who do that?
Yeah. I can't remember if it was South Park or not. Where, yeah, they were like Yelp reviewers and pushing people around to get their way. And then it started permeating into like normal life where like one of the kids went to school with another kid and they're like using it to bully them. Like, oh, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to give your family's restaurant a 2-star review.
That's harsh.
And then they started pushing back eventually, the restaurateurs.
Let's be honest, they all push back. They can easily overpower the Yelp reviewers.
True. They're weak and they hide behind their phones. Well, we learned a lot today.
Yeah, and then one more thing I'll touch on, though, is I was wondering if this is similar to, and again, we talked about this briefly last weekend, but there's studies that have been done about how if a human loses $100, they feel more sad than they feel happy when they gain $100, which is known as loss aversion. And that humanity in general prefers not losing over winning. So yeah, and I feel like this is similar to that in some way. Not exactly the same thing, but still similar. Do you have loss aversion, by the way? Are you somebody who's like that?
I think that makes more sense. You can't be overly disappointed at something you don't have,
That's true. Yeah.
but you can certainly be disappointed in losing something you know you had. I think it's a very nice surprise to win some money, but it's not much more than a dang. But you know, if I know I had $20 in my pocket or whatever, and now all of a sudden it's gone, yeah, it's certainly frustrating. Or it's $100.
It feels worse to lose that than it would be to somebody to just hand you $100 and
Oh, like I said, because it's something that you know you had and now you don't. Versus, somebody randomly giving you $100, and it's just like, well, that came out of nowhere. It's a pleasant surprise, but not a. It's like, okay, well, I started at zero. I'm back at zero. If you lose something, you started at zero. Now you're negative something.
I think actually the studies that did this, they calculated what the equivalent value would be for you to gain a certain number. Like what number would that be to amount to
For the
losing?
feeling to be the same?
Yeah. I think they did that. I forget what it was.
It would be really low.
The loss, you mean? Or like if you lose 100, it would be like 500. You'd need to get 500 to be able to be as happy as you would be as sad if you were to lose 100. So it's like, I forget what the ratio is, but there is a ratio there. And I think they did calculate it as part of the study.
Well, yeah, I think that's true. Like, if you gave me $1 million, that would certainly offset me losing $500. Probably less than that, obviously, but
yeah, it wasn't it wasn't as high of a difference as you would expect. I think it was pretty reasonable. Yeah, it wasn't 100 times or anything like that. I think it was within the the tens or whatever. It also depends on the person as well, right? I mean, I don't know how they do these studies because it's very difficult to judge a human's behavior. Every human is different, right? Like, you losing $100, you might feel way worse about it than somebody else losing $100.
I'm more curious about like what's the circumstances of gaining the $100. Like, is it just an everyday occurrence? Because you can't account for that. If it's like a $1,000 giveaway and it's between you and one other person, I'll feel way worse about losing because it's a 50-50 shot. You know what I mean? Versus if it's one in, if it's like the lottery, if it's one in however million chance.
No, I don't think it's like you're not competing with anybody. I guess think of it as, let's say you're flipping a coin, and if it's heads, you get $100. If it's tails, you lose $100. If you get tails, you lose the $100. You'll feel worse than you would feel happy if you got a heads.
Yeah, then in that case, yeah, my ratio would be much lower.
What would your ratio be?
Probably like 100 to 300. 100 loss, 300 gain. I feel would be pretty equal in that kind of situation.
I do feel like that's quite close to the real thing. Again, I forget what it is, but the range was similar. Again, like I said, it wasn't it wasn't hundreds of times more. It was quite reasonable, but it wasn't equal. That's the thing. It was not equal.
Yeah, if the chance of gaining money is better, like I said, it would be a lower amount. Now, if you were like talking like roll a 20-sided die and there was one chance of gaining, money and one chance of losing money, then it would be much higher. I just wouldn't care at a certain point. Like it'd be like, oh, there's a 1 in 20 chance of gaining money.
And a 19 out of 20 chance of losing it?
No, I'm saying 1 in 1 and then all the other ones are blank, let's say.
If the chance of either of those things happening is as that goes to zero, that difference between the two goes to zero. Like, yeah, it goes to zero as well. The ratio goes to 1.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an interesting way of putting it, of looking at it.
I'm looking at more of the gain aspect, more than the loss aspect. I'm not looking at them together. But if they have the same chance of happening, then you can look at them together. It doesn't matter. But I'm looking at more of the gain aspect. So, like I said, a 1 in 2 chance, the number could be much smaller. But a 1 in 50 chance, the number can be much higher because I'm not holding my breath at that point anyways. Where do you land on that?
Well, yeah. So for me, I mean, obviously, I still feel the same way that personally speaking, I do have loss aversion. I feel worse about losing 100 than I do about gaining 100. But I don't know what my ratio would be. I don't think it would be too drastic. You said 300. Yeah, maybe like, I don't know, 200. But I'm also the gambling sort, so it's hard to describe that, right? Because like that's why I'm wondering about the studies. If they pick people who have an addictive personality, have a gambling addiction or something in that vein, I wonder if they have different results than the people who don't. Because that also affects it, right? Like somebody who, let's say somebody goes into a casino, it's a different feeling than if somebody who's not really interested in that. When the person goes into a casino and they start gambling, they get a rush from doing it. So even the loss is part of that. And so I wonder how much that affects the ratio.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, the whole thing wasn't even about gambling to begin with. It was just a study of.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
I'd have to. I think I should read that study now because it's quite interesting. Who did they sample and how did they decide the experiment itself? And I feel like there'd be a lot of bias to it. And I wonder what the sample size was as well.
Yeah, sample size is important, and if it's peer reviewed and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, I mean, it's talked about pretty often, it seems, but yeah, I guess you're right. I guess it could be one of those articles that goes through, even though it hadn't been peer reviewed, it hadn't had enough critique against it.
a lot of those reviews, like the good ones, will be like, here's the results in this situation, here's the results in that situation, and they're similar questions, but just different ways of framing the question to kind of knock out a lot of those like gambling biases and all that.
I mean, also, it's ideal when it's run independently by another group of researchers, because then it's like, well, then you can actually confirm that, okay, well, in different circumstances, they still got similar results.
Yeah, exactly.
That's especially necessary in these types of psychology, sociology experiments. In science, they do that, right? With like more strict criteria with chemistry, physics. They have these, they run these experiments, multiple teams, different teams, but I don't know. I don't know how strict they are in psychology and sociology.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, though, I think most people will agree that losing is worse than gaining.
Well, yeah, as you put it, the common sense thought about it is, yeah, you're right. Loss aversion seems like the thing that you would expect.
Good little thought experiment. On that note, ready to review Old Yeller?
Yeah. Speaking of money, let's talk about Cash Money. That was my favorite segment at the beginning of the movie. They keep talking about cash money. At the end, he comes back. Cash money, cash money. Man, I didn't expect them to actually use that phrase in those days, but apparently they did. It just means money, like, right?
I don't know if it just means money or because they talked about Confederate dollars too.
I thought that at first.
So
I thought that there
I'm
was
wondering
some.
if cash money is like the northern currency.
No, but see, I thought that, and I looked it up, and I don't know. I couldn't find anything specific to that. All I found was that it just means, the bills, the actual currency. And you're right, it could mean that. It could mean that the Confederate money was, whatever it was called, and cash money was the one that won, the money of the peoples that actually succeeded. But yeah, I don't know. It just means the bills, not the checks, not the money orders or whatever else. I don't even know. I don't know what they had back then. Did they even have a banking system?
Well, yeah, I don't think they had all that stuff back then. So
this is the olden days. But which, by the way, I thought Old Yeller was set a bit later, but I guess no, it was set in the Old West, back when they had derogatory terms for the native peoples.
Yeah, probably the mid 1800s, probably, right? Or early 1800s. When was the Civil War? It was probably around then or shortly before, shortly after. Like I said, based on the fact that they referred to Confederate dollars.
1861 was when the Confederacy was formed. So again, like I said, it felt I was off. I thought that this thing was set in 20s, 30s, 1920s, 1930s. I was way off.
It was an interesting movie.
Let me also say that because I thought, okay, whenever I hear Old Yeller, I thought, okay, that's just his name. That's his name. But Yeller is because that's in the dialect of the South. Yeller is yellow. That's just how they pronounce yellow. And so Old Yeller just means old yellow, that old yellow stray, as the kid, I forget what his name is, but the one that really loved the dog. He called it that old yeller stray in the Southern accent. So it isn't even a name. It's just a description.
Yeah, just what the dog was.
But that's also something that was completely new to me that I actually thought that was a name until this movie.
Yeah, it was weird. watching it and seeing the timeliness of it, the way they talked, the way they acted, and just in the context of film, like, oh, you can't say that this day. That's what I thought a few times during that movie. I was like, what if this was remade?
Yeah. They'd have to remake it in the modern era.
But regardless, like, even if it was, they were trying to do a period piece, like, I think there's a lot of stuff they wouldn't show in there. Like, I don't think they'd have, like, some of the animal stuff, even him, like, wrangling the hogs, which, by the way, that was a friggin' terrible way to do it. Like,
Yeah, I never understood that. Like, what? And also, why did he? Okay, explain this to me, because I'm not a hunter. I'm not a farmer. I don't know what's going on. He lassos the the little pig, or the hog, or whatever it is. He lassos it successfully. He lifts it up. I assume that he's going to just trap it and keep it, but he does
I think he
something
was just
to it.
branding it. I think he was just branding
But what
it.
does that mean? Branding it for what reason?
So, like, if somebody else finds, because they were wild hogs pretty much. So, like, if somebody else came across it, they'd know, like, it was somebody else's. It was tagged as somebody else's for.
But don't you want to keep it? Like, why would you even do that? What's the point then? We're just letting it go.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I don't know all the ins and outs like that. But I also know, like,
At first,
you
I thought
can't
he was
keep
going to
wild.
slit its throat because he said
Well, that's what I thought too. Yeah.
And I
That's what I
thought,
thought,
that's
too.
not it. That's not appropriate for a kids
Well, I
movie.
thought that's what they were talking about when they were. I thought that's what they were talking about when they were saying, like, get them up in the tree.
Yeah,
Like, oh yeah, you hoist them into the tree and then you slit their throat, right?
yeah, and then you use it as food
But no,
or
he
whatever.
sat in the tree and then pulled one up, and then he tried to pull one up that was like 3 times his weight. I'm like, this isn't going to end well. And sure enough, he falls into the thing, and it's like,
And he's
well,
sitting so precariously on
literally
the
no
branch.
surprise.
Did you see how he was
Yeah.
sitting?
Yeah.
What a
He wasn't
daredevil!
straddling it or anything. He was just like,
His ass was barely
Yeah.
on the branch. He was sliding off even before he was hoisting anything up.
exactly. It was terrible. But yeah, I don't exactly know. I just figured he was branding it.
No, I think you're right. I think he was marking it or branding it, but I still don't understand the point of that. I guess maybe back in then they had some way of.
You can't really keep hogs though, because once you domesticate a hog, it like just turns into like a pig.
But what were they using them for then?
I imagine food and all that, but there's probably a difference between, I don't know, maybe they didn't keep pigs back then. Maybe they just let the hogs roam and just grabbed them when they needed them.
Given how difficult it seemed to be to get at least one of them.
Yeah, but that's because he was a fucking 12-year-old kid, and he's like, let's go into this massive hog thing. Hogs are so wildly violent that it's not even like, I don't even, if you're a kid, you're just like, I'm just going to go get rabbits. There's only 3 of us, a woman and 2 kids. Just go get rabbits.
Wait, and also, doesn't he have a gun? Why didn't you just shoot it?
You could.
I think that part was just fabricated so that Old Yeller gets injured. And we're on the edge of our seats thinking, like, is this the part? Is this the part?
Yep.
No, it wasn't the part, but anyway. The part, you know what, though? I got to say, first of all, I thought that Old Yeller, because, the Old Yeller gets shot in the end. Spoiler. But I thought he gets shot somewhere in the wilderness. But no, he's literally in a cage. And point
He's
blank.
in a cage at night, yeah.
Point blank
Because,
gets
like,
shot.
everything you see, everything I see is like, oh, we're going to take him out back and shoot him.
Yeah,
Like, that's always been
that's the stereotype.
That's always kind of been the narrative of the thing. Take him out back and shoot him. So I thought it was like round him around the back of the house, where nobody can see him, and it's daytime and all that. And it's a big, I always heard a big emotional scene and all that. No, he's just rabid inside of a cage, and at nighttime, and the boy just goes in and just
point blank.
pops one, and yep, and that's the end.
Oh, but did you like did you appreciate how the tone changes immediately? He shoots him, suddenly it's daytime and it's all chipper music. The father comes home, everybody's happy. It's insane. That was
Well, it's probably months later, right? But
yeah, but just the tone in the movie. Think about it. You're watching the movie probably crying because apparently this was a scene that really was a tear jerker at the time. And then suddenly, oh, it's all chipper. Everybody's happy. That's crazy. There's just, I don't know. They didn't have any sort of delay between the two.
no, it's true. Just do it and move on. That's the whole thing on the farm. Life goes on.
I mean, yeah, they had no remorse, no hesitation about shooting the cow.
Yeah, no, it was overall it was an interesting movie. Had very little plot. It's just like boy doesn't like dog.
Boy likes dog.
Dog fights a fucking bear.
Oh yeah, did you like
Boy
the little kid? Did you like the little kid trying to like lasso or take
Yeah.
by the hand, grab a little bear cub, and think that that's the right thing to do? Let's do this. Oh my God, what an idiot! I hated him so much.
That boy was interesting, man. He was
throwing rocks at people. That's
He was spunky.
insane.
yeah, he was throwing rocks at people. He was a spunky little kid.
And then they had this slang for actually like people throwing rocks. You know, you would say, "Oh, this person was," they were stoning him. No, they were just saying, "Oh, he rocked me." Like
Yep.
that's actually a phrase. He rocked me.
Yeah, some of the phrases they had in that movie were pretty interesting, especially from the little kid when he was getting all aggressive and all that. I should have wrote some of them down, but they were good.
But even the grown-ups were saying "rocked," as if it's like that's actually just a common phrase. That happens often, I guess, back in the Old West.
Yeah, it must. But yeah, Old Yeller fought a grizzly bear. No, a black bear.
Which is arguably even worse. So let's be honest. Like, you know.
It looked okay. So here's the thing, though, is that it like looked real.
Yeah, I think it was probably.
Like I'm thinking, like, how are they pulling this scene off?
Yeah, PETA didn't exist back then. PETA would have a field day nowadays.
Oh no! You know what my favorite part was when the cow was charging the boy, and Old Yeller literally fucking pile drove her head into the ground
Twice. Yep. And then the cow gets up. It's okay. Don't worry about it. No injury.
Yeah.
How did they manage that? I don't know. Like, how did they actually film it? Because I don't know. It was a real cow, wasn't it? It must have been a real cow, but he must have been trained, or maybe the cow. Both of them were trained.
They probably just had a rope and pulled him into the
ground.
Pulled him into the ground. Yeah,
that's not very good for the cow, right?
Probably not. But I'm thinking animal protections were not a big concern during this. And that's what I mean. Like that's why you wouldn't get away with a lot of the stuff they showed in that movie, and if they were to remake it. But that was my favorite, where the dog, pile drove the cow into the ground twice, and then he's like, stand here. He's trying to milk the cow. He's like, bring the dog over. The dog just stares at him. The cow's perfect. I'm like, yeah, because it knows what it's gonna get. It's gonna get a pile driver into the. Somehow this 100-pound dog is gonna pile drive the. However, I don't even know how heavy they are.
Probably a ton.
Yeah, 1,000-pound cow into the ground like it was nothing. Yeah, you better sit still while you get milked.
That boy was pretty adept at milking, though. He had that little stool. I didn't know they had like a one-legged stool that they used. But he puts it and immediately starts milking. Like that was experience right there. That's impressive. Anytime, man, I don't know. Like that was probably the most impressive thing they did in that movie. It was just to show off that actor's ability to milk the cow.
How about the drinking water that was just a little pond out front, and people were bathing in it, and the animals were drinking from it, and
yeah, those were the old days. Dysentery,
Yeah, I was gonna say. I don't
Oregon
know
Trail.
any of them lived
It's all
till
about
dad
the
got
Oregon
back.
Trail. That's what inspired it. But yeah, it was miserable. And then I hated the guy. What's his name? The man who didn't go with the other men, the one who stuck around. I hated him, man. It was terrible. Jesus, I thought
he was gonna be like a bad guy or something.
Yeah,
he really wasn't.
But he was just a lazy idiot. But yeah, I would have shot him. This is the Old West. You can do whatever you want. He seems like an abusive type of person, letting his granddaughter do all the work. That what a man would typically be doing.
It was an interesting movie. It wasn't.
I liked it though. It wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't bad for all like the wrong reasons. Like it didn't have much of a plot or anything like that. And
well, apparently, like it was a kids movie at the time. It was released as a kids movie, marketed as a kids movie.
I mean, you could tell because they had a lot of goofy sound effects.
But the fact that it talks about serious topics like rabies is no joke. And by the way, they call it hydrophobia. I don't know. I mean, the hydrophobia would be with the accent. Hydrophobia would be the way that they would describe it. But it's funny because if I had seen that movie when I was young, I would have known. Because when you brought up rabies, whenever we talked about it long ago on the podcast, you talked about how people who have rabies, they have a fear of water. And at the time, I didn't know that. But I think if I had seen this movie when I was young, I would have known because, well, hydrophobia, there we go. It's in the name.
Yeah, which is probably why they called it hydrophobia back then, that's pretty much the
main symptom.
The apparent Parent symptom. Yeah.
Yeah, it's frightening though, especially because it's like, while they were so close, it seemed like Old Yeller was fine for 3 weeks or whatever they waited, and then suddenly on the last day, or say second to last day, they were gonna release him. Suddenly he gets the symptom of aggression and then foaming at the mouth, and
Yeah, I don't know if it takes that long to happen after a wolf fight, and
he was holding it in. He was a good dog.
he was a good dog.
He fought a black bear. He fought a wolf.
A wolf,
A
God,
cow.
man, life in the 1800s was wild, dude. Pigs, wolves, bears, cows. Man, you had a lot to deal with. Horses breaking through the fence. I've seen horses break through fences.
Really? In real life?
Yep. We used to live in an area where there were horses around, and when I was a kid, and I remember I was being outside playing one day and just hearing this loud crash, then seeing a couple horses take off down the road, and they broke right through the fence and hauled ass down the road. I don't know what spooked them or whatever, but they broke the fence like it was nothing. It wasn't a very good fence. It was just an old, very similar, just kind of looked like an old ratty wooden fence.
Well, similar to the movie, I guess.
Yeah, but they broke through it like it was nothing and just hauled ass down, like clean down the road. Just watched them take off. Just kept going. I don't know where they went or how long it took them to get them back, but
They're still going. Still running across Canada.
yeah, they might be wild horses at this point. But I have seen that in real life, so
Well, I mean, hopefully no one was hurt.
if they were, I'm sure they're healed. But yeah, it was an interesting movie. So, Old Yeller or Pump Up the Volume?
I mean, it's still pump up the volume, but man, they did a good job with Old Yeller. I don't regret one bit about watching it finally.
Yeah, it was a good watch, an old classic, and now we're caught up.
A nice catchy song as well about Old Yeller at the beginning and Young Yeller at the end.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, it was a good movie. Yeah, I'm gonna also stick with Beautiful Boy, but it was a good movie.
At least this movie wasn't about schizophrenia for once.
True. Yeah, we finally got out of this schizophrenia. Now we're into rabies.
Maybe here's hoping another one, eh? Is it my turn to pick?
It's your turn to pick.
All right. Randomize. Ernest Goes to Camp.
Nice, getting the classics.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen this one, but I know of it.
Have you seen any Ernest movies?
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I've seen Ernest movies. There's a Halloween one. It's called Ernest Scared Stupid. And I remember as a kid, man, that movie got me a little bit.
Oh, for being spooky, got you.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Ernest Goes to Camp is from 1987. I'm assuming there's only one, but just in case, that's the year.
Yeah, they didn't do any more Ernest Goes to Camps.
Well, they didn't remake it, is what I mean.
The Ernest character was Jim Varney's thing, and that's it. Slinky Dog in Toy Story.
Oh, he was the voice of Slinky Dog?
Yep.
Ah, interesting.
And then the guy he was the hardware store owner in Home Improvement. Kind of had that gruff voice. He also does like Adam Sandler movies. Older guy.
And he was also, because my dad likes this movie, Atlantis, The Lost Empire. It's a cartoon about Atlantis.
Oh, okay.
But he played Cookie in that movie, which is also like one of these weird, gruff roles. So that fits, I guess.
Yeah, he had a very gruff voice. You know what? It's been a very long time since I watched an Ernest movie, so
Maybe this one will take the cake, eh?
I've watched this one, so I think I've probably watched all the Ernest movies. I would think, but it's been a very long time since I watched any Ernest movies. I mean, the last time they made an Ernest movie was Ernest Goes to Africa in '97.
I mean, he died a long time ago, the Jim Varney guy, so.
He did, but I always enjoyed these movies, so it'll be fun to watch them as an adult. We'll see. It's a kids comedy, so it's not a. Is it a kids comedy? I always kind of figured it was because I watched them as a kid, right? But yeah, I think it's a kids comedy. I remember the horror one wasn't really horror. It was like goofy, but just as a kid, it was scary. All right, why don't you tell us what our word of the fortnight is?
Word of the fortnight this time around is refectory. REFECTORY. It's a noun, and it just means a dining hall. Here's my example. My coworkers and I had potato salad at the refectory. And I got this from the game Chance of Sinar, which is a game about communication. Really, it's about translating a few languages and then having those people who know those languages communicate with each other.
Where'd you play that?
Oh, it's on Game Pass. It's a game that Joel recommended a long time ago.
Ah, okay.
It's like it's a puzzly type of game in the sense that, there are puzzles, but the bulk of it is figuring out which, what do these hieroglyphics, basically they're hieroglyphics, they're pictograms, which of these mean what in the various types, because there's multiple languages. And then you have to translate between them and also, obviously, English for your own benefit. It's a good game. I highly recommend it. And the art style is good as well. Chants of Sennaar.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, it may look like Journey from the cover, but it's not. It's nothing like
It does
Journey.
kind of look like Journey.
No, it's nothing like that.
Very good. And we learn nice words like refectory. And last but not least for the week, it's Pokemon time. It's Pokemon time. Do 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 do.
And now we only do three matches per.
3. It's gonna be shorter than ever. We are judging Pokemon cries of the legendary Pokemon plus Scyther in the Pokemon series. We don't know who they are. We're judging them purely based on the cries that they emit. And we're in the 3rd round, getting towards the end. And we're only doing 3 today. So here we go. We're on matchup 73 between 50 and 18. Here we go. Here's 50.
All right. The little Tweety bird.
Yeah, the little Tweety bird. That somehow is a legendary Pokemon, apparently.
Or Scyther.
Yeah, that one could be Scyther. Yeah.
Oh, that one is so, it's all over the place. It bubbles, it flaps its wings, it screeches, it's got everything.
That's true.
I kind of like the simplicity of 50, though.
Yeah, I actually do too. This is too much. Nothing's making that sound.
Yeah, it's not a dump truck, it's not a forklift, it's nothing.
I'm voting for 50 on this one.
Yeah, let's go with 50.
All right, the nice simple 50 taking it. All right, matchup 74 between 58 and 26. Here's 58.
Oh yeah, this is the gorilla-like thing trapped in a box, metal box.
It's definitely talking to us. Yeah. And it's going up against 26.
It's nice, but no, I like the monkey in a box.
Yeah, I agree. That one's much better.
It's got character.
It does have character. Yeah. You can really feel its distress cries.
Well, it's about to break out and kill somebody. I don't know. It's like Jurassic Park.
You can be distressed before you go on a rampage.
Well, yeah, that's true.
All right, and last one of the day, matchup 75 between 10 and 23. Here's 10.
Oh, it's a death horse.
An ice horse or death horse? I'm thinking ice horse.
Yeah, this one is the ice one. I think we had a death one before, but it might have not moved on.
Yeah, and here's 23.
It's such a weird one.
None of those are...
It's so weird, the second one, right? It's like, what is it? What is
really
going
weird.
on? It's like a lava lamp that's spilling open.
It's kind of what it is, yeah.
And then the jingle, it was just like it's the Jack in the Box being undone. It's like reversing the Jack in the Box while the lava lamp is broken and it's spilling out.
All right, which one do you got on this one? The ice horse or the Jack in the Box?
See, play the horse again. I'm trying to hear if there's that crystalline sound effect that I don't like, but I feel like it's safe from that. It's okay.
It's not really a crystalline sound effect. It's like a dusting. Like I said, it's like it feels like it's like bringing ice with it.
No, okay, I'll go with 10.
Yeah, I like 10, just more cry-like. 23, just nothing's making this sound. That's another sound that's not coming from anything's throat.
We're gonna see what these things are. It's probably like a tiny, cute little Pokemon that's making that sound. It's like, what?
I don't care if it's
hell?
cute. It's just it's not making it. Yeah, we're gonna know what all these Pokemon are afterwards. You guys can check it out at
tot3.welcome.fm.
But we don't know. We're gonna know at the very end. We'll look at them all and judge them harshly and be surprised at what comes out of what. Well, guys, that's it for the week.
Good stuff.
Bye, everybody.